Hey there and welcome back to Mass Effect 2. My name is Pete and today we complete the finale of the game's first act after we have just finished recruiting our fourth and final main game squad member in the last episode. And that first act consists of exactly that, the prologue missions including the mission on Freedom's Progress, the recruitment of Mordin, Garrus, Jack and Grunt, and then one more big mission to transition us over to Act 2. All of that of course does not include any of the game's DLC missions, of which we have completed a few already. So here we are now, just returning from the prison ship Purgatory, and the Illusive Man wants to speak to us. And well, I would say let's not keep him waiting.
Shepard, I think we have them. Horizon, one of our colonies in the Terminus systems, just went silent. If it isn't under attack, it soon will be. Has Mordin delivered the countermeasure for the Seeker swarms?
Not yet.
Let's hope he works well under pressure. There's something else you should know. One of your former crew, Kaidan Alenko, is stationed on Horizon.
Right, so after we already met Tali back in Freedom's Progress, it now looks like we're about to run into Kaidan here on Horizon. And regardless of the fact that this is a bit of an odd coincidence, Kaidan's presence alone is already a bit of a question mark.
Last I knew, Kaidan was Alliance. Why is he out in the Terminus systems?
Officially, it's an outreach program to improve Alliance relation with the colonies, but they're up to something. And if they sent Commander Alenko, it must be big. I suggest you take it up with him.
Well, that might explain why Kaidan is there, but honestly, the Collector's targeting that exact colony, well, something does feel off about that, doesn't it?
The Collectors just happened to pick a colony with one of my former crew? I don't buy it.
It shouldn't be a surprise the Collectors are interested in you, especially if they're working for the Reapers. They might be going after him to get to you.
And that certainly sounds a bit more plausible. However, since Kaidan is a member of the Alliance and we were as well a few years back, I think it might not be a bad idea to at least give them a quick heads up.
We should send a message to the Citadel. The Alliance can give us reinforcements.
Not until you investigate. I don't want the Alliance getting in our way. Once you have the situation under control, I'll send the message personally.
Alright then, no more questions to ask here, so I think we have no other choice but to get going.
Send the coordinates. We'll head straight there.
This is the most warning we've ever had, Shepard. Good luck.
Joker, set a course for Horizon. I've got to go see the Professor.
Aye, aye, Commander.
Tell me you have something.
Yes.
Lilith, we've got a problem.
Still can't calibrate the targeting matrix?
Those defense towers are useless if we don't figure it out.
Sorry, Commander. Getting our comm systems back online takes priority.
Yeah. Okay. Surprised people haven't tried to blame that one on me, too.
People out here don't trust the Alliance. It's nothing personal. What is that?
Get everyone to the safe house. I'll cover you! Run! Hurry!
control. We are the harbinger of their perfection. Prepare these humans for ascension.
Alright, looks like we're having our first encounter with the Collectors soon, so let's bring a squad that is well suited for that. In my opinion, one of the easier choices here is to bring Miranda along, because she has access to the warp ability, which is highly effective against the Collectors. Grunt is then a good secondary choice, not only because he can soak up a good amount of damage, but also because he can use Concussive Shot, which is pretty useful in this mission as well. Time to once again spend some squad points now, and with Shepard we're finally able to max out Adrenaline Rush. To evolve the power, we now have the choice between the Hardened and the Heightened version, with Hardened giving Shepard some extra protection while the ability is active, while Heightened slows down time even more than it did before. Now, one thing that is never mentioned in the entire game at all is that Adrenaline Rush also gives you a damage bonus. And that damage bonus correlates with the time slowdown effect, which means that shots fired with the Heightened Adrenaline Rush will do more damage than with Hardened. Now, this is not the whole story, and there are weapons in the game where Hardened is actually the better choice, but for me, Heightened has another advantage gameplay-wise, and that is that it makes enemies almost stand still, and therefore makes aiming and landing precise headshots much easier. And that is also why we're going with it, but again, both options are viable. If you want to learn more, I suggest reading up on it a bit, as this is a very good topic to become familiar with some of the mechanics in the game. But enough of that, Heightened Adrenaline Rush it is, and now we're moving on with Miranda. She has 2 points to spend and we'll put both of those in warp. After all, that is the power that we brought her for, and this way we can get the absolute most out of it. Grunt meanwhile also has 2 points to spend, but the next upgrade for Concussive Shot would cost 3. However, that puts us in the comfortable position of being able to spend at least 1 point relatively penalty-free. After all, we get 2 more with the next level up. So let's unlock Incendiary Armor for Grunt. This makes him a bit more capable against armored enemies, of which there will also be a few. Weapon selection is next, and once again we're not changing anything here. We will once again bring the M-920 Cain with us, which will make at least one of the fights in this mission a whole lot easier. And that's it, let's head planetside and begin the mission on Horizon. Right, here we are. Let's switch over to the assault rifle, activate Grunt's incendiary ammo, and get going.
We're groundside. Mort, you sure these armor upgrades will protect us from the Seeker swarms?
Certainty impossible, but in limited numbers should confuse detection make us invisible to swarms. In theory.
In theory?
Experimental technology. Only test is contact with Seeker swarms. Look forward to seeing if you survive.
Definitely an interesting choice for motivating words here by Morden, but we have no more time to argue about it, because right now we are about to find out if we're actually tough enough to take on the Collectors. The first group is engaging us here, and with that we have officially met a brand new type of enemy. As you can see, the Collectors have no shields, but instead a layer of biotic barrier, and that is also why we brought Miranda along, because warp is very efficient in taking down those barriers. And every time we successfully use warp to completely remove a barrier, that counts towards the warp specialist achievement, for which we need to remove the barriers of 25 enemies using warp. By the way, the increased damage output with Heightened Adrenaline Rush also becomes very evident here. Just 2 bursts with the assault rifle are enough to entirely remove any layer of protection the enemies have, and thus, with the abilities we currently have, this first fight does not pose too much of a challenge. Right, so that is the first group taken care of, but of course more is still to come. For the moment though, we have a few seconds, so let's make sure to grab the power cells in this area. That will not only stock up our standard ammunition, but also give us some heavy weapons ammo. Moving on, we can then also find a datapad on a picnic table here, and hacking that one gives us 6,000 credits. That's all the valuables we can get for the moment though. Time to proceed to the next area.
Commander, we're getting interference. We can't maintain it. The Collectors are disrupting communications.
We're on our own now.
Going now.
Here we now have the next group of enemies waiting for us, but also once again plenty of cover available. Now, the Collectors here are not on their own, they are also accompanied by a few Husks. We have met those before in Mass Effect 1, and the way they behave in this game has not changed much. They are still very dangerous close combat units. They no longer have that energy charge ability they had in Mass Effect 1, but their melee attacks are still pretty dangerous, especially on Insanity difficulty. Luckily though, they can also be instantly killed with an ability like Concussive Shot, provided their armor has been removed first. However, since their armor is pretty weak and our weapons pack quite the punch at this point, that task is most of the time not too difficult. The real challenge comes from their speed and their numbers, which normally makes them a priority target whenever they appear. So if you see a group of Husks, it's a good idea to get rid of their armor quickly. Ideally though, you want to take them out entirely before they can engage. This here, by the way, the second time we have removed a barrier using warp in this mission, which actually puts our total up to 4 already, because we already got ourselves the first 2 in the Lost Operative assignment which we completed back in episode 11. With the last Collector down, the second fight of the episode is now completed, and we can start looting.
Those things look like the Husks the Geth used on Eden Prime.
The Geth got that technology from Sovereign.
Then your Illusive Man was right. Collectors must work for the Reapers.
There are 2 objects of interest in this area. The first one is the datapad we just recovered, the other one the research upgrade on this dead Collector.
We can use this.
Sort of looks human. This one of the colonists?
No. On Eden Prime, victims were turned into Husks by impaling them on spikes. We haven't seen any. The Collectors must have brought the Husks. They're taking the colonists alive for something else.
And as if the attacks themselves were not horrible enough, taking the victims alive certainly adds another level of cruelty, and of course also begs the question for the motives behind it.
The Collectors must be experimenting on the colonists. What are they up to?
Speculation will get us nowhere. It could be anything.
Guess we'll find out when we stop them.
Also worth noting at this point is that these Husks are not entirely the same, which, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, already became obvious when we fought them earlier.
These aren't the same creatures I fought on Eden Prime. They're more advanced, evolved.
They still die when you shoot them.
Now we have the first morality choice of the mission. As usual, we can pick between Paragon and Renegade, and let's get our squad focused on saving as many colonists as we can, which will give us the first 2 Paragon points of this episode.
The Collectors aren't getting away with more victims. Let's move out.
Yes, sir.
Your people... gone.
Just like Freedom's Progress. The entire colony gone.
Alright, the next firefight is coming up, but this time we've been sneaky enough to get a bit of an advantage, so the first Collector already goes down before it notices us. And not only for the first enemy, but for the entire fight, I really like the sniper rifle, because there is quite a bit of distance between us and the enemies, and the sniper rifle puts us under no pressure to close in any further. Instead, we can land headshot after headshot, also get ourselves another successful warp with Miranda, and all in all, it should not take long before the last enemy falls. Once again then, we have 2 objects of immediate interest, and the first one is a medkit over in the building to the left. You should also be able to hear that there are still enemies around, but at least for the next few seconds they do not pose any threat.
Got it.
Understood.
The second important thing is then the save over in the building on the other side. This will once again give us a nice amount of credits and should therefore not be missed. Down the stairs, we then immediately find ourselves in an excellent cover position to engage the final enemy of the area. One last headshot with the sniper rifle takes this Collector down, and so things are now calming down once again. The building container over on the left, by the way, can safely be skipped. There is absolutely nothing inside.
Seems to be some kind of stasis field. Keeps you conscious but completely helpless.
They've been like this a long time.
Before we then proceed into the next area, we want to take a quick detour up the stairs, as there is some ammunition as well as some cash to be found here, the latter in the form of 3,000 credits that we can obtain by hacking a computer. Once everything is in our possession, we can then go back downstairs and prepare for the next area full of enemies. On our way over there, it is then very hard to overlook the Collector particle beam, a precise and powerful heavy weapon that we definitely want to pick up. However, for the moment we'll switch back to the assault rifle, before we proceed far enough into the next area to trigger a short cutscene. Picking up the particle beam, by the way, also completely fills up our heavy weapon ammo, which is something I'll get back to in just a moment. Alright, in this fight we make first contact with Harbinger, or rather with a collector possessed by Harbinger, because as we just saw, Harbinger himself seems to hold out in some form of command post. Still, despite that, he has the ability to possess any of the collectors on the battlefield, and once he does, they make for a pretty dangerous enemy. They have no health bar, but high levels of armor and barriers on top of that, and also access to several dangerous biotic abilities. The most annoying of those is probably Singularity, which you just saw at the beginning of the fight. That ability can penetrate thin cover and cause a short staggering effect, which then exposes whoever's been hit to the fire of all enemies in sight. Needless to say, it's a good idea to avoid Harbinger's powers as much as possible, and to also take him out of the fight relatively quickly. However, it might also be a good idea to first reduce the number of other collector enemies around, because once one of Harbinger's thralls has been eliminated, Harbinger can always possess a new collector. I think there is a bit of a time limit between two possession events, still it can be very frustrating if you have one of the collector enemies down to low health, and then all of a sudden that enemy turns into Harbinger with full armor and barriers. In the end though, this is something that you can likely not avoid entirely, and simply because Harbinger is such a powerful enemy, he should always have priority whenever he appears. Now, one more quick note regarding the Collector particle beam we just picked up earlier. Especially with Harbinger giving you trouble in this fight, you might be tempted to use this weapon immediately. And since the particle beam comes with a full load of heavy weapon ammo, there is absolutely nothing keeping you away from pulling the trigger. However, keeping in mind what's still to come, I would recommend keeping to your standard weapons at this point. Without spoiling anything, I will say that there is a reason we brought the M-920 Cain with us on this mission, and it would be a shame if we used the particle cannon now, only to later discover that we no longer have enough ammunition to actually fire the Cain. Now, between here and the moment where that becomes important, there are still 3 power cell crates available, but unless you want to really micromanage your approach, it's probably best to just avoid using the particle beam entirely. On the other hand, of course, if you didn't even take the Cain in the first place, then you are absolutely free to wreak havoc with the particle beam as long as you have ammo for it. And once again, here we are, all enemies are defeated, time to collect all valuables we can find. We start things off with this small building over on the right here, where accessing a computer gives us 3,000 credits. We do not need to go up the stairs though, there is no entrance to the building above there, the stairs simply serve as a bit of a vantage point for this fight, and with a highly accurate weapon they make for an excellent sniping spot. But again, they don't serve any purpose beyond that, so our next goal is the small container at the opposite end of the area. Here we can find another crate of power cells, which once again stocks our standard ammunition up to full capacity, and also gives us additional heavy weapon ammo should we need it. And with that we have collected everything we can, let us now proceed through the locked door and into what lies beyond.
Company, get out here, now! You're human. What are you doing out here? You lead them right here!
Right, only our second chance for morality points here, and this means renegade points this time. The other option doesn't give us anything, so we might as well establish who's boss here.
I cleared a path. You're lucky you're not in the hold of a collector ship right now.
Those things are collectors? You mean, they're real? I thought they were just made up, you know, propaganda to keep us in Alliance space. No, they got Lilith. I saw her go down. Sten, too. They got damn near everybody.
And this time things work the other way around. As you can see, the Renegade option is missing, so let's grab ourselves 2 Paragon points and ask this guy who he actually is.
What's your name? What do you do here?
Name's Delan. Mechanic. I came down to check on the main grid after we lost our comm signals. And I heard screaming. I looked outside and there were swarms of bugs. Everyone they touched just froze. I sealed the doors. Damn it, it's the Alliance's fault. They stationed that Commander Alenko here and built those defense towers. It made us a target.
And of course, it was only a matter of time until the name Kaidan Alenko was to be mentioned, so let's dig a bit deeper here, ideally though without mentioning that we know him.
Tell me more about this Alliance rep.
Commander Alenko? Heard he was some kind of hero or something. That made nothing to me though. Would rather he'd stayed back in Council space.
Any idea what he was doing on Horizon?
Supposed to be helping us get the defense towers up and running. I got the feeling he was here for something else. Spying on us, maybe.
Delan here has now mentioned the defense towers several times, and considering how a collector ship is parked near the colony, those towers could potentially be very useful.
Tell me about the colony defense towers.
A gift from the Alliance. High-powered Guardian lasers. Supposed to keep hostile ships from landing near the colony. Had to build a massive underground generator just to give it enough juice. Only we couldn't get the targeting systems online. So the Alliance gave us a giant gun that couldn't shoot straight. Stupid sons of bitches.
Okay, I think we'll keep the towers in mind regardless. Before we leave though, his attitude towards the Alliance remains the last point of discussion.
Why do you think this is the Alliance's fault?
We're just a small colony. Nobody bothered us before we started building those damn defense towers and drew attention to ourselves. I left Council space to get away from the Alliance. Nothing good ever comes from getting mixed up with them.
And now we have 2 choices here, sticking with the Alliance or further antagonizing them. Neither one gives any morality points though, and whether due to a bug or by design, we can actually choose them both, and so, since this is a completionist playthrough, we will do exactly that.
The Collectors are targeting remote colonies. The Alliance was trying to help.
I don't need their help. Too many strings attached. That rep said he was just here to get the towers online, but mark my word, there's more to it.
The Alliance doesn't care about the Terminus colonies.
Damn straight, that's what I tried to tell everybody. The Alliance didn't send someone out here because they want to help us. They were after something, always are.
Now let's leave the whole Alliance thing be and focus on something that will actually be able to help us, and of course I'm talking about those defense towers.
If you have defenses, we can use them against the Collector ship.
You'd need to calibrate the targeting system first. It's never worked right.
We can figure it out. Just tell us where to find it.
Head for the main transmitter on the other side of the colony. Pretty hard to miss. The targeting controls are at the base.
Alright, third and final morality choice of this conversation. The option on the left would eventually allow us to obtain 2 Renegade points, but Delan isn't coming with us either way, so let's make that decision for him and get 2 Paragon points instead.
It's probably just better if you stay out of the way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I'll let you out, but I'm locking the door behind you. I'm not taking any chances. Good luck. I think you're gonna need it.
Right, now before we move on, this room holds a few interesting things in store for us. Next to a medkit and a wall safe, we can also find some platinum as well as a weapons locker. And that weapons locker is very important, because we will use it now to switch back to the M-920 Cain. And unfortunately, this weapon locker does not give you any additional heavy weapon ammo, so if you do not have enough ammo in the Cain to use it after collecting 2 more power cell containers, then you will sadly not be able to fire it in this mission. So, back out we go, and we are immediately facing the next group of enemies.
You got it!
Right.
The collectors over in the corner here have not noticed us yet, but firing the first shot will of course change that. We also just got ourselves successful warp number 6, so we are about 1/4 towards the warp specialist achievement. Now, compared to the previous one, this fight cranks up the difficulty a tiny bit more, because Harbinger will once again make appearances on the battlefield, and unlike in the previous fight, the Husks also return. And so, despite the fact that Harbinger is by far the most powerful enemy in this fight, at least for the moment, taking out the Husks first is likely a very good idea if you want to avoid getting swarmed. Another good idea is to stay in cover in that exact same position that we are in at the moment, because that cover is thick enough to block Harbinger's singularity attack. So in this position, Harbinger will not be able to stagger us out of cover, which is certainly a nice advantage. Now, just a few seconds after Harbinger has been defeated, another enemy enters the battlefield. And this so-called Scion is a new type of enemy as well, a very slow-moving but also a very well-protected one, however, all on its own, not too hard to take down. The Scion does have several weak spots that can be exploited, especially with the sniper rifle. The head is as usual the most obvious one. It also comes without any barrier or health bar, only with a layer of armor, and even though that one layer of armor can withstand a lot of punishment, a few well-placed shots are enough to take a Scion down reliably without much trouble. The Scion's attack is a shockwave that is once again able to penetrate thin cover, and is therefore also once again unable to affect us in the position that we are in. So here we are, one more group of enemies defeated, but we're still not done yet. Once again we can do some looting, and the area is a bit confusing in that regard. There are a lot of building containers here and most of them can be entered, however there are not that many items of actual value. Going through the first container we can find some power cells, and this right here is the second to last batch available in this mission. Crossing over to the other side, we can then eventually find another dead collector with a research upgrade on it. This one will boost our biotic damage output.
We can use this.
How come we don't see more frozen people around?
The collectors have already loaded them onto their ship. We're running out of time.
Before we unlock the door and move onwards, we will also want to make a quick stop upstairs, because looking down on that big gate that we need to pass through in a moment, that is where we can access another computer for 3000 credits. Just for the sake of completion, we'll then take the opposite stairs back down, but as you can see, no matter which way you take, you're not missing out on anything else. That also completes everything we can do in this area, so once we're at the door, we can unlock it and then move on. Now we enter a large area with a lot of cover all around, and unsurprisingly, a few enemies also greet us immediately. Now there are a few different approaches and strategies that you can employ here. I personally like to quickly get rid of the first husk and then hunker down on the left walkway, as that gives you a bit of an elevated position and an excellent overview over the entire battlefield. Equally as important, it also puts a healthy amount of distance between you and the enemies, and that is certainly useful because this first wave here comes in what is potentially a very troubling combination. After defeating one, we now have two Scions against us simultaneously, and they are accompanied by a large number of Husks. And while the Scions approach slowly and can take quite a bit of punishment, the Husks are more or less the exact opposite of that. Fast moving, yes, but pretty fragile. In the end, both enemy types will eventually try to get close to us, and with both enemy types it is best to avoid that. Regarding the two Scions, there is actually a small exploit that you can use here, because just after you have opened the door to this area, it is possible to get them into your line of fire without actually entering the area. The sniper rifle should obviously be the weapon of choice for that approach, and if you manage to take them both down that way, the Husks will not even spawn. However, this also feels incredibly cheap to me, and as you can see, it is absolutely possible to defeat this group of enemies on Insanity difficulty, so we will do this the proper way. Once the Scions and the first wave of Husks are defeated, it is best to remain cautious, because another small group of Husks is about to close in. Again, this is nothing that we can't handle, but they also spawned pretty close to us, so it's a bit easier to get overrun with this group. If you want to play it extra safe, then you can of course retreat back to the door that you came through once the Scions are down. This will put the maximum amount of distance between your squad and the Husk spawn points, and should allow you to easily get rid of them. While all of this is going on, by the way, do not forget about the medkit that is right next to you. Even if you don't need it and are stocked full, you should grab it for the extra credits. Apart from a few stragglers, the area is now largely cleared out, and the two lonely Husks that remain should not give us too much trouble. However, the fight is far from over yet. We still need to activate the transmitter tower, which might help us get that turret up and running, which will then in turn hopefully be enough to make the collector ship leave once and for all.
There's the transmitter.
Now, before we interact with the tower, we want to make our way over to the other side of the area, because over on this side we can find the final power cell container of the mission. Later on, you might not have enough time to grab it, while right now you can take as long as you need. The mission only continues once we activate the transmitter. And that is exactly what we'll do now by putting our hacking skills to good use, and hopefully that way we're able to re-establish a connection with the Normandy.
Normandy, do you copy?
Joker here. Signal's weak, Commander, but we got you.
Any dialogue choices here are mainly a matter of personal flavor, and I prefer to cut right to the chase.
Edie, can you get the colony's defense towers online?
Errors in the calibration software are easily rectified, but it will take time to bring the towers to full power. I recommend a defensive posture. I will not be able to mask the increased generator output.
The Collectors will try to stop it. Good.
Again, there are no morality points or anything else unique to be gained here, so we'll go with the snide answer on one of those rare occasions where we can do so without getting penalized for it.
Got any other helpful tips?
Just one. Enemy reinforcements are closing in. I suggest you ready weapons.
And so now begins the second part of this fight, for which we will return to the exact same position we were holding before.
Going to cover!
Moving.
This time though, we're not fighting any Scions. Instead, we have a number of Collectors against us, and Harbinger is also once again among them. Just like before, the group is also being accompanied by some Husks, but thankfully those spawn a good distance away from us, so we don't have to worry about them immediately. Apart from that, the strategy for this portion of the fight remains fairly straightforward. As long as there is some ground between us and the enemies, things should be fine, especially so if you have access to a sniper rifle. At this point, it might also be worth it to quickly talk about the different types of Collector enemies, because apart from the occasional appearance of Harbingers, some Husks or the Scions, there is still some more variety within our enemies' ranks. And the pattern here is very similar to what we already know from enemies like the Blue Suns, who have their standard troopers and then some higher level specialized enemies as well. And the same is true for the Collectors, who have the Collector drones as the standard infantry units, equipped with assault rifles, weak barriers and no other special abilities. Then we have the Collector Guardians, who are definitely one step above that, as they can increase the power of their assault rifles with warp ammunition, and also have access to deployable shields, much like the Geth did back in Mass Effect 1. Last but not least, we then have the Collector Assassins, which are the Collector's long-range sniping units, equipped with the particle beam that we also just obtained earlier in this mission. They are not as heavily protected as the Guardians though, and also don't have access to any other special abilities. That just as a quick overview of what we have to deal with. I think it's always helpful to know what your enemies are capable of, and of course it can't hurt to know their weaknesses either. Now, as you may have noticed, we have left our position, and there is a very simple reason for that. As you might have been able to guess, the fight is not over yet, and the next group of Husks will spawn right where we stood just a moment ago. A short line from one of your squad members should also inform you of that event being imminent, so as soon as you hear that, it's a good idea to move into a different position, ideally though you're already on your way at that point. For me, I found this low wall in the back here to work very nicely, at least until the Husks are defeated.
Sequential power-up initiated. Guardian anti-ship. 40%.
More coming. Guess we got their attention.
As you can see here, the group of Husks is sizable enough to be a problem if it spawns right on top of you, and even over this distance they are not to be taken lightly. Still, your firepower at this point should be enough to significantly reduce their numbers before they reach you, and even then the cover you're hiding behind can cause some problems for them, so realistically you should not have any issues with them. Apart from giving you enough time to engage the Husks, this approach also serves a different purpose, and that is to split the enemy forces into two more manageable groups. The first group, that's the Husks, and those have just been taken care of, while the second group are the Collectors, who have spawned right near the entrance to the area. And because that is as far away as possible from where we have been hiding, those Collector units will likely not cause you any trouble before you engage them. Still, that does not mean that the firefight here will be easy, but of course this way it is not as hard as it could be. Our warp specialist counter, by the way, is up to 7 at this point, and I think we'll also manage to get up to 8 in this fight, but if I'm not mistaken, that's about it for this mission. Of course, if you really want to and pay close attention, you can get much higher numbers than this, but with so much of the game still left to come, I think we should have no trouble unlocking the achievement soon. So what else is there to talk about? Well, not much really. Maybe apart from the fact that this is actually the last group of enemies we're facing in this mission, however with emphasis on the word group. So once these guys are down, we will have one more battle to fight, and well, you already know that we brought the Cain for that, so you can probably roughly imagine the type of enemy we're going up against. At this point though, we only have 2 enemies left. We can use one of them to obtain another successful warp, and a few seconds after that, the fight is finally over.
Get ready. There's got to be more.
Ideally, before you hear this line from one of your squad members, your first priority should be to collect as much ammunition as possible, and unfortunately, you also don't have a lot of time to do so. Alright, here we are with what can easily be identified as the boss of this mission. The Collectors have sent a Praetorian to take care of us, and if we're not extremely careful, that thing will do its job. However, for the most part, the Praetorian is focused exclusively on Shepard, so if the squad members keep their distance, they are relatively safe. And as soon as the enemy is damaged a bit and your squad members are not too close by, it is then time to once again unpack the power of the M-920 Cain. Now, as you can see, the Praetorian is still alive, but we have done a significant amount of damage. The Praetorian will now attack the ground for a few times, and during that time it is pointless to attack it because it is invulnerable. Once the sequence is complete, the Praetorian will emerge again with full barriers, something that it did not have before. Timing is therefore absolutely vital when using the Cain. If you wait too long, the Praetorian might already begin this ground attack, which is called the Death Choir by the way, and at that point the Cain has armor and barrier to deal with, and will therefore of course not do as much damage. However, if you time it correctly, you only have to get rid of the barriers once, and that way you can defeat the Praetorian in just a few seconds.
Get away!
So Delan survived, that's good to see, as it also allows us to obtain 2 more Paragon points here.
There's nothing we can do. They're gone.
Half the colony's in there. They took Egan and Sam and Lilith. Do something!
Once again, we have a simple Paragon Renegade choice here, and so let us go with Paragon once again.
I didn't want it to end this way. I did what I could.
It was a good fight, Shepard.
Shepard? Wait. I know that name. Sure, I remember you. You're some type of big Alliance hero.
Commander Shepard, captain of the Normandy, the first human Spectre, savior of the Citadel. You're in the presence of a legend, Delan. And a ghost.
All the good people we lost and you get left behind. Figures. Screw this. I'm done with you Alliance types.
I thought you were dead, Commander. We all did.
Well, I have to admit, a bit of a cheesy entrance here by Kaidan. Still, we probably can't deny that it's good to see him, and expressing that feeling will also earn us 2 more Paragon points.
It's been too long, Kaidan. How have you been?
Is that all you have to say? You show up after 2 years and just act like nothing happened. I would have followed you anywhere, Commander. Thinking you were gone. It was like losing a limb. Why didn't you try to contact me? Why didn't you let me know you were alive?
Now, I'm actually not quite sure if the option at the top here does also give Paragon points. I know it does if Kaidan was your romance option in Mass Effect 1, and unfortunately there is also no way to check this, so let's just play it safe here and take it anyway.
I was out for 2 years. You've moved on with your career and your life. Why reopen old wounds?
I did move on. At least I thought I did. But now we've got reports about you and Cerberus.
Reports? So much for security.
Alliance intel thought Cerberus might be behind the missing human colonies. I got a tip this colony might be the next one to get hit. Anderson stonewalled me, but there were rumors that you weren't dead, that But you were working for the enemy.
Now, I don't think that at this point Shepard is convinced that Cerberus are in fact the good guys. However, the clear enemies are probably the ones we just fought, so let's get 2 more Paragon points by pointing out that difference.
Our colonies are disappearing. The Alliance turned its back on them. Cerberus is the only group willing to do something about it.
You can't really believe that. We both know what Cerberus is like, what they're capable of. I wanted to believe the rumors that you were alive, but I never expected anything like this. You've turned your back on everything we stood for.
Now, this I think we can refuse with some certainty. We are still very much in the business of saving the entire galaxy, and pointing out that fact is worth another 2 Paragon points.
Kaidan, you know me. You know I'd only do this for the right reason. You saw it yourself. The Collectors are targeting human colonies, and they're working with the Reapers.
I want to believe you, Shepard, but I don't trust Cerberus. They could be using the threat of a Reaper to manipulate you. What if they're behind it? What if they're working with the Collectors?
Typical Alliance attitude. You're so focused on Cerberus that you're blind to the real threat.
At this point, by the way, I think it's interesting to see Miranda make the same argument that we made with the Council in Mass Effect 1, accusing Kaidan of being so focused on one particular enemy that he fails to see the bigger picture. And unfortunately, we will have to agree with her here, but at least that also gives us 2 more Paragon points.
You're letting how you feel about their history get in the way of facts.
Maybe. Or maybe you feel like you owe Cerberus because they saved you. Maybe you're the one who's not thinking straight. You've changed. But I still know where my loyalties lie. I'm an Alliance soldier. Always will be. I've got to report back to the Citadel. They can decide if they believe your story or not.
And here we are now with the last morality choice of this conversation, and despite what he just said, I still think having Kaidan in the crew would be a tremendous help, so we will ask him to join us. Worst case scenario, we at least get 2 more Paragon points out of it.
I could use someone like you in my crew, Kaidan. It'll be just like old times.
No, it won't. I'll never work for Cerberus. Goodbye, Shepard. And be careful.
Joker, send the shuttle to pick us up. I've had enough of this colony.
Alright, here we are with Horizon completed and with the colony defense achievement unlocked. The final conversation was a bit of a bummer, but all things considered we were as successful as we could have been. For our efforts we once again receive enough experience points to level up, as we were apparently able to save about 2/3 of the colony, at least that is what the mission summary says. With the Collector Particle Beam we have unlocked a new heavy weapon now, and we have also gained access to 2 new research upgrades, the first increasing biotic damage for the entire squad, the other one substantially increasing Shepard's health. We also leave this mission with 60,000 credits, that is also the absolute maximum of what we were able to obtain, and the same also goes for the 2,000 units of platinum we found.
Shepard, good work on Horizon. Hopefully the Collectors will think twice before attacking another colony.
So here we are now debriefing with the Illusive Man. And this conversation is an excellent opportunity to collect a few more morality points, and while the mission was certainly as much of a success as we could have hoped for, we did in fact not save everyone, and that is the dialogue option we choose here for 2 additional Paragon points.
It's not a victory. We interrupted the Collectors, but they still abducted half the colony.
That's better than an entire colony, and more than we've accomplished since the abductions began. The Collectors will be more careful now, but I think we can find another way to lure them in.
Well, interesting choice of words here, because this is in fact the first time we hear anything about luring the Collectors in.
I wondered if you had something to do with that attack. Kaidan said the Alliance got a tip about me and Cerberus.
I released a few carefully disguised rumors that you might be alive and working for Cerberus.
I see. What were you trying to prove?
I suspected the Collectors were looking for you or people connected to you. Now I know for certain. It was a risk, but I couldn't just wait for them to take another colony. You understand?
Well, I'm not quite sure what that forgiving, but sadly we don't have any options here that allow us to discuss this further, so let's instead make plans for the future, and once again we are going after the 2 Paragon points here.
We have to make sure they don't abduct anyone else.
I want the Collectors stopped for that very reason. That's why we're doing this, Shepard. I'm devoting all resources to finding a way through the Omega-4 relay. We have to hit them where they live. Your team will need to be strong, as will their resolve. There's no looking back. The same goes for you. Can I assume you've put your past relationships behind you?
Now for a change, this is not a morality decision, so we can safely tell the Illusive Man to naff off without any consequences.
None of your damn business.
If it affects the mission, better you should leave it behind. Shepard, once you find a way through the Omega-4 relay to the Collector homeworld, there's no guarantee you'll return. To have any hope of surviving, you and your entire team must be fully committed to this.
Now here we once again have the chance at both Paragon and Renegade points. However, Paragon is once again the clear-cut choice as we stand up for our team here, and this time the option also gives us 5 Paragon points as a reward.
Let me worry about them. You just find us a way to the Collector homeworld.
I just want to be upfront about your odds. You'll need everyone at their best. I've forwarded 3 more dossiers. Keep building your team while I find a way through the relay. And be careful, Shepard. The Collectors will be watching you.
I guess we're really gonna do it. Hit the Omega-4 relay. Take the fight to the Collectors in person. Looking forward to the action. After seeing what those bastards did on Horizon, though, makes you think.
Alright, one more quick conversation with Jacob before we're done here, and we will of course embrace our role as the motivator here. This gives us 2 more Paragon points, and I think it's the right thing to do.
They're powerful, but we've got a few tricks for them. If anyone can stop them, we can.
No argument there, Commander. Horizon just made it hit home. What we're doing, what we're up against. Gonna go take care of a little unfinished business. I imagine everyone else is too. Getting some closure, you know?
Alright, it has taken quite a while, but we have finally reached the end of the episode. Horizon, and with that the game's first act is now completed. We have unlocked our 22nd achievement of this playthrough, and we are now ready for new adventures. And those will include a total of 3 more recruitment missions, after we have just received 3 more dossiers from the Illusive Man. However, we will likely not get started with those right away. After all, we now also have access to a ton of new assignments, and sooner or later we will also unlock the loyalty missions for all of our existing squad members. So as we begin Act 2, there is certainly a lot to do. For today though, I would say let's make the cut right here. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, then I would be happy if you could leave a thumbs up, and if you want to support the channel further, then you can of course subscribe if you haven't done so already, or you can also check out and maybe pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.